We're into May and the international archery season is well underway, with the month's highlight coming in the form of Stage 2 of the Hyundai Archery World Cup in Shanghai, and plenty more happening in the world of archery. In this episode, we talk to a former Olympic champion who took the spotlight when the sport returned to the Games in 1972, investigate an unlikely Indian-Italian alliance, and hear from the Mexican recurve women's team on what changed to finally make them winners on the world stage. But first, back to last month. The opening stage of the Hyundai Archery World Cup provided thrills, spills, and more than a few surprises during an action-packed week on the turquoise coast in Turkey. 4 first-time individual winners climbed the podium as established names and home favourites fell by the wayside. It does mean Bazansky has a 10 for the win. He puts it into the 10, and look at that. We'll join Jyoti Sureka-Venom, Joseph Bazansky, Penny Healy and Dan Olaru at the season's grand finale in Mexico. We'll have 4 more qualifiers in Shanghai. World number 1 Ella Gibson headlined last year's Athlete of the Year honours, the breakout Brit taking the first overall prize to be awarded in a decade. But the surprise runner-up? Italian barebower Cinzia Norziglia. The reigning World Games, World Field and World 3D champion said getting such huge recognition for the lesser spotlighted bow style was a big honour. The Hyundai Archery World Cup is back in China this month after 4 years away due to the worldwide pandemic. The Chinese team made its return to the circuit at the season opener in Turkey, but there was still one other notable Asian absence. The Korean national trials finished at the same time as competition ran in Antalya, but archery's leading nation will be back in force in Shanghai. On the Korean team list for the first time ever, a certain Rio Wild. The storied US compound archer has traded in the shooting line for the coaching box, and he's doing it abroad for a team that has a track record of dominance. In recurve competition, at least. But Rio isn't the only former pro to turn to coaching abroad. 2-time Hyundai Archery World Cup champion Sergio Pagni, one of the longest tenured Italian internationals, is also wearing a new shirt in 2023.
Why are you wearing an Indian t-shirt?
Next. I'm wearing Indian t-shirt because I'm following a little what is happening around the world. I can say that I won everything, but I won enough. I'm still shooting as a pro for all the NFA tournaments and all the Open Pro. And World Cup is something that I already give. I won 2 times more than 10 years ago. I already competing, I'm still competing last season, but there are a lot of new guys. And I think that is the moment to give to them, no? Well, we started from 2018. I'm a very big friend of Abhijit Verma. The first was not a coaching, was a cooperation, no? And we start to work also with the federation, so we work officially for several times from 2018, then sometimes during the stages on the 2019 also. So now they put much more interest on the preparation for the Asian Games. I focus much more on the high-level preparation. Even if I like to work with my young guys in the club, and coaching them is very inspirational sometimes, having brand new mind, increase their potential, So this big group of talented guys in India is something that inspires you so much.
So does Britain's Gibson have the antidote for India's venom?
So I think that the specific job with Jyoti was shining something that is already very, very shining.
Out phase. Gibson shoots a second 9 for a 28. Ella Gibson, world number 1, he's into the bronze medal match, wishing Jyoti Surekavelam luck. What a magnificent performance from the Indian chip.
It's been extremely good because I have started this year with good scores, shooting good, and I'm happy with my shooting.
Sometimes athletes forget that he's not only shooting 300 arrows each day, but these arrows during the stages, the final arrows more than the other, are much more important. So we explained to her that is a good potential, and she have not to be scared to match against the strongest in the world.
9 is all that's required from Sara Lopez to claim her first individual world title, and she does it with great style. A 146 for her.
So every athlete thinks that they are capable of winning every match or every tournament. It affects you a lot, but if you are not focusing on it rather than you're focusing on your shooting or something which is in your hands, I think that will be good so that you can perform better.
Venom only needs the 8 for her first ever stage win. She's clipped it on the line for another perfect score, and a 149 out of a possible 150 is more than enough for Jyoti Surekavelam's first ever Hyundai Archery World Cup stage win here in Antalya.
She already was on the final field so many times. I think that she deserves a gold. She deserves a gold because she already was on that level for so many times. Sometimes we have some countries that just have some talented guys, no, they can bring so easily a gold medal. I can see that this is not the case of India. They stay a high level because they shoot every single day, and they want to perform better and better every time.
2023 brings the start of Olympic qualification for Paris 2024. And for the recurve teams on the line, it's when things get serious. It's a feeling that Pennsylvanian archer John Williams knows well. He made history in 1972, winning when archery returned to the Olympic programme after a 52-year hiatus. But those games in Munich are also remembered for a very different reason.
It's one which I relive every 4 years because the picture that they broadcast every 4 years of the guy standing on the balcony, I saw that through my binoculars. The Americans' building was only about 100 yards from where everything was happening. It went from excitement, enjoyment, you know, everybody partying at the discotheque in the Olympic Village, to armed guards walking the perimeter of the fence every 50 feet, tanks in the underground parking lot. It changed the atmosphere completely. You know, there's so much positive, and then there's that. Being a favorite going into that tournament was pretty remarkable, as I was the reigning 1971 world champion in target. So I had high hopes going into Munich. I mean, this was the Olympics. This wasn't a state championships or a national championships. It was the whole world. I was in the right place at the right time. I was peaking repeatedly at the tournaments that I needed to peak at. I took first place for the men's team in the Olympic trials. It was a pretty amazing experience for a country boy from Pennsylvania. And the real attraction for me with archery was that the better I shot, the more I got to travel, more places that I got to go. So we get on the plane probably 4 or 5 days before opening ceremonies when we went over. We get all checked into the village and everything, and of course we start practicing. And things were going along pretty smoothly, right up until the Arab-Israeli incident, which actually happened the day before we were supposed to start shooting. We hadn't started actually competing yet, and at that point in time, nobody was really sure if we were going to get a chance to compete. I just had to hope and pray that things were going to move forward, and I had to be prepared for that eventuality, which we were all hoping for. It was probably divine intervention, because I needed a day off. I'd been practicing so hard for almost 2 weeks. I was having some timing issues. I was having some issues getting used to my new bow. That day probably let everything soak in that I'd been doing. They had the memorial ceremony for the athletes that lost their lives. And we got up the next day and got bussed out to the field, and the whistles blew and everything was as it should have been. I felt prepared. I felt like I was ready. I had my mother and dad sitting in the stands behind me, so I had that support. And my first arrow was 10. It was the first tournament that I could remember that I started in the lead. I was always a slow starter. It scared me to death. I went back to my dad and I said, "What do I do now?" Because I was always used to chasing somebody. And my dad said, "Just shoot like you're 20 points behind." There was no way to avoid looking at the leaderboard. You know, it was 60 feet wide and 30 feet high, and I knew where I was. I wasn't thinking about that so much as I was thinking about each individual arrow, and each individual end, and each individual distance. I was shooting the best arrows that I had shot the whole time I was over there in Munich. During the first feat, I hit 50 meters, and I had one of those arrows that everybody has once in a while, the ones that just kind of you'd love to get your fingers back on the string, but you can't. And I ended up tying the world record at 50 meters with a miss. Victor Sidoruk, he came down and gave me a great big bear hug and a kiss on both cheeks. I still had 3 arrows in my quiver. I'm John Williams. I am the Olympic gold medalist from the very first Olympic Games that archery was reintroduced in 50 years ago.
For the last decade, Mexico's recurve women have been a rising force on the world stage, taking 3 Olympic medals over the last 3 editions of the Games. But until last month, the team had never taken a win on the world stage.
Nuevo, innovador y con muchas ganas.
Honestamente sí sentí que fue cuando quedamos las seleccionadas este año, me dio mucha alegría porque lo que conlleva el traer una medalla olímpica. 3 medallas, que son 2 individuales y un equipo, que muchos países quisieran y han peleado por tener, pero que no tienen.
Pues más que nada es la experiencia y todo, porque también tenemos a la otra compañera que es juvenil, es muy chiquita y estamos haciendo un buen balance entre eso.
Es muy buena experiencia, la verdad es que puedo aprender mucho de las 3 personas que están alrededor de mí en el equipo y es lo que voy a estar haciendo, voy a estar aprendiendo, voy a estar mejorando.
Creo que pues el ser motivación, a la vez obviamente como somos de generaciones muy atrás, que las nuevas generaciones obviamente sigan creyendo en lo que hemos logrado, en lo que yo he logrado. Y bueno, fue muy importante las 2 medallas y bueno, también el ser parte de la historia. Me siento obviamente, pues obviamente el ser parte de la historia de los medallistas olímpicos de México, pues obviamente es y pues bueno, ese sueño aún está vigente para poder lograrlo.
Inició mi carrera deportiva en tiro con arco. Todos ellos hemos ido empujando y hoy por hoy puedo decir que ya cualquier chica en la selección nacional puede ser un excelente equipo.
Pues primeramente la clasificación a Olímpicos y otra que teníamos era ganar el oro, primer lugar en la Copa, porque siempre nos quedamos en segundo lugar. Entonces el haberlo logrado aquí para nosotros fue una felicidad muy grande.
Error here for Ida Roman. Of course it was going to be a 10 to finish off, and a 57 is a great score in recurve archery, especially if it takes you to the recurve women's team gold medal.
Sí, esa sensación fue increíble, sin duda no lo voy a olvidar, fue una experiencia que no voy a olvidar. Siento que es muy importante, fue muy importante porque no solo para los demás que vean que estamos fuertes y que seguimos entrenando y que seguimos fuertes y no importa que vengan compañeras nuevas, ahí estamos, sino también para nosotras, para la motivación interna de nosotras de que estamos haciendo bien las cosas, que estamos yendo por un buen camino y que podemos lograrlo. Que México es potencia y que México obviamente ha crecido mucho en el tiro con arco, tanto en el país como internacionalmente. Estamos pues con la idea y con el sueño. Obviamente estoy aquí por algo y pues es por un sueño de estar nuevamente en Juegos Olímpicos.
So next up, it's off to Shanghai for stage 2 of the Hyundai Archery World Cup and a return to one of the sport's most iconic host cities. Stay tuned for ongoing reporting and expert analysis from China throughout the month. And the Archery Plus show will be back with more from around the world of archery in June.